What's good, FHL fans out there? We are back with, unfortunately, our only edition of Coach's Corner this season. It's been a hectic season. Early start, there was a break, and now, all of a sudden, we're into the playoffs without actually even technically finishing the season. But those are the breaks, and I'm joined here with, of course, the infamous...
I'm Freddy Krueger, analyst of the Buffalo Sabres, sitting here with...
Silas, a.k.a. Boogeyman, also the analyst, unbiased analyst of the FHL, including my favorite team, hometown, Chicago Blackhawks. So I guess we'll just kick off a quick summary of the 2014 season here, Krueger. So I guess we'll start off at the beginning of the draft. I mean, Chicago lucked out, got the first round pick, ended up getting McKinnon. And that's one bright star that is probably looking to crack the FHL next season.
I'm going to interrupt you right there, and I'm going to say you got to stop hitting the table because this is a very sensitive microphone we have here.
I see, yes. We have some new equipment going on, but the microphone does not match the table. Or I should say the table does not match the high-spec microphone. With the new cap system and whatnot, we saw a lot more goons inserted into the lineup, example, we got Brian McGrattan playing for the Los Angeles Kings.
Got Paulie G, representative of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yes, Brian Boyle suiting up for Chicago, who was dealt, of course, to Boston. And, of course, Boston has been full of goons since the get-go. But, yes, this cap system definitely really changed the league. A lot of top-end guys that you would normally see on some of these teams, looking pretty homeless. And I can say a lot of players that made this year might be homeless next year too. What do you think?
Yeah, that's right. A lot of you see in the few years before, you see a lot of guys like Brad Richards on the fourth line, stuff like that. That's just not possible with the new cap system that we've implemented this year. And I think it's a forward step for the FHL. You got real fourth liners like Paul Gaustad, or even the younger guys on a team like Buffalo with Corey Conacher, and those guys probably won't have a job next year.
I don't think so, and I don't think Corey Conacher will find himself on a team, and I think there's going to be a lot of guys looking for jobs. Guys like, even the Sedin twins, you would have to question whether their ability to keep up with the FHL will even remain, or even bigger stars like Big Joe with, the younger guys pushing for jobs. I mean, you can't afford to keep Big Joes on your third lines anymore.
That's right. Funny you mentioned the Sedin twins. Insider from Chicago. Is that some inside information you have there?
Well, we were very shocked to see the Sedins end up back in Chicago. I guess the good thing is for fans and myself, they didn't give up too much to acquire their services. So, we all know it's no secret Chicago is a little cold right now. So I think it was more of a desperate ploy to maybe inject some rejuvenation into their lineup here. And if it doesn't turn out, they didn't give up too much to get the twins, but who knows what GM Jurassic is thinking up in there.
That's right. Let's not step too lightly over that topic. I want to talk some more about that. You say cold. That's a little bit of an understatement. They've dropped, 7 or 8 of their last few games in the FHL there, even against the lower seeds. What can the fans look forward to in the playoffs? How can they be assured that their team, who has on the record has been struggling throughout the playoffs in past years, how can they have some faith in their team knowing that they're on a losing streak going into playoffs?
Well, 2 weeks prior to that, they did drop, I believe it was 8 straight games in the FHL. They fired their nutritionists and stuff like that, so they weren't really, on par for nutrition and proper training. But, what's great is that they did turn around and they actually beat, they left the season with a 2-game win streak. That's a far cry from putting together a few wins and getting on a hot streak. But, it's always good that they got the taste of winning back in their mouth. And I think this break will be nice. It's a nice reset for the playoffs. And, maybe in the back of their mind, they're pretty happy with jump-starting the playoffs earlier than we had hoped here. But Chicago, they're a skilled team. You can't take any team lightly in this FHL. But the fans should be worried. but you just never know. So I guess we'll touch now on I guess some of the transactions that we've seen. Probably the biggest transaction this year in the FHL was, of course, the big Boston and Los Angeles trade. That was a big one.
Very big.
Very big.
Unexpected as well.
Yes, I mean when Los Angeles put Crosby out there, I mean it was a 2-week process, and I think every team made an offer. After the trade was consummated, I don't think any team could have matched what Boston gave.
No.
I mean, we saw Boston give up this year's first, next year's first, Johnny Gaudreau, Tyler Myers, and Steven Stamkos for Crosby. And I don't even remember who went the other way, and nobody frankly really cares who went the other way, because that deal was mega for Boston. And so far so good. I mean, Boston's really embraced Crosby since his arrival. LA took a little bit longer for Stamkos to fit in there, but LA's really slowly turned their game around. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, 1-for-1. I think Boston as a team has improved more because of that trade than LA did. You saw Stamkos come in the first 5-8 games. He struggled big time. Where Crosby seems like he's taken a leadership role in that team. He's turned them around, and they're a team to not take so lightly anymore. They've beat the top 3 teams in the last few weeks. I think beat Chicago twice. Am I right?
Yes, they've beat Chicago twice, 2 weeks in a row. So Crosby's added a lot of leadership, a lot of confidence in that group. A lot of people especially fans, are quick to judge Boston and what they gave up. They gave up a lot of future assets. Probably most notably Johnny Gaudreau, who is probably the most hyped up American young prospect in the FHL today. But with that said, if you look up and down Boston's lineup, Freddie, I mean, these guys, none of them are old.
Yeah,
they're all in their prime. You got Jeff Carter, Jamie Benn. All these guys are in their prime. So he's got some years to groom some of his younger guys, and Jonathan Drouin, and even Seth Jones is learning really nicely from guys like Ryan McDonough, Dustin Byfuglien, and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So Boston did a good deal there, and LA, of course, they stocked up. I guess they weren't too happy with Crosby. They still got Stamkos. They got a couple firsts, and that all depends on how it shakes down with how well LA drafts, pretty much.
That's right. But of course, the champion 4 seasons in a row. The champion.
Yes.
It still hasn't affected his play. Still in second place in the standings. So Crosby, no Crosby, they're looking good in the playoffs.
But LA is built for the playoffs. LA is a team that gets stronger as the season goes. They're a team that takes breaks in between. I mean, in years past, sometimes they don't play for months, and they come back and win championships. They know how to win. So, you can't question an organization's moves when they got 4 trophies and 4 rings.
That's right.
So, good on both teams for that deal. That was definitely the biggest deal this season. We've seen smaller deals, nothing too major. I don't think Buffalo, your city, made too many deals this year. I guess your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as they like to say, GM Famox likes to say, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And you've seen the chokehold they've had throughout the whole season in the first place spot. I think the only big trade that came out of Buffalo this year was Evander Kane. We saw him move, and they pulled in Bobby Ryan, who wasn't expected. Was quite a surprise that they took him in, but we've seen him flourish in Buffalo, being the first star many games in the last 10. Probably, I think it was 3 out of the last 10 games he was the first star, and that's something that the fans have to be excited about going into the playoffs. Their team is still first, and as Famox I think is right in, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. No need to go after those big trades if there's no reason to. And of course they brought in Pietrangelo to solidify the defensive end, and I think that's all they really need to do.
Yeah, as far as Buffalo, they kept pretty quiet, but as Famox, we all know his he's usually an emotional GM that likes to make deals, but this year he definitely added a few key pieces. Also part of that deal. I know they're very excited to acquire Gustav Nyquist, who was also a huge part of that deal. And luckily for them, Bobby Ryan, who was pretty much a cap relief to make the deal happen, has really stepped up in Buffalo. The same thing could be said for Evander Kane. He's been pretty, they've been very happy with his play, and Dion Phaneuf has really solidified himself as a menace on the blue line. He may not be nearly as gifted as Pietrangelo, but Phaneuf was brought in for one reason, and that was some toughness. As we all know, Chicago lacks that element in their game. I guess let's go on now to talk about some of the other teams, Kruger. I guess let's start off with Montreal. Your thoughts on Montreal this season?
Montreal, that's quite a surprise we've seen out of Montreal this year. Usually known as, they're always motivated for the beginning of the year, and then they just kind of die off, end up in last, and that's all we hear from Montreal. They always have a good team, but never have anything to show for it. This year, we've seen a little bit of a leadership, maybe a motivational change in their number one guy, Alexander Ovechkin. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that.
He's definitely stepped to the plate. They saw Crosby go to Boston, and he started carrying them, and I think Ovechkin had a little bit of his little rivalry come out, burn his fire inside, and he has really carried that team. I know in Buffalo, FanWax has been frustrated playing against Montreal for the last few weeks, dropping, I think, 3 games to them in the last 4, and that's quite a surprise, something you wouldn't expect, but they've definitely stepped up their game big time in the later part of the season.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, Montreal is known for a team that gets excited when the season starts. I mean, the GM is very active GM in trades. He has acquired many great assets. He makes a lot of deals, some good, some bad. However, his shelves are continually stocked with talent. He's a great drafting. He has got a great drafting team. Unfortunately, sometimes he does not experience or witness the fruits of his labor on ice performance, and a lot has to do with Alexander Ovechkin and not finding his groove since 2009.
2000, what was it? Actually, 2008 when they went to the finals. That's the last anything we saw with the Montreal Canadiens.
So it's great that Ovi stepped up. I have to big up a lot to Jonathan Toews, who's also been a huge part, finally solidifying that number one center. And of course, Showtime Patty Kane. His confidence with Kane is a lot different now. He plays him differently. Ovechkin plays differently. He's not so one-dimensional coaching style anymore. And of course, they're loaded with middle talent. I mean, look down the list. Yeah. Who do we got?
You got Toews, Tavares, and who do we got on the third lines?
I mean, we got Barkov. He's got
Monahan.
Joe Thornton, Monahan. I mean, the list goes on. Nick, is Backstrom's? No, Backstrom's now with Boston, isn't he?
I think so. I'm not really sure about that. But you can't again overlook the fact. I think most GMs would agree where Montreal wins their games is with Carey Price.
Yes.
Carey Price, PK Subban, those two guys have been the reason for a lot of their victories. And that shows in the Vezina Trophy race. I think Carey Price is in the lead.
Carey Price is in the lead. I mean, he's basically the number one goaltender in the league, without question. He keeps him in each and every game. Maybe he'll have a bad game, but he'll have a bad game 1 out of 7 to 8 games. Mm-hmm. This guy is their workhorse. This guy is somebody they lean heavily on. Montreal is a transitional team. They attack. They're not much of a cycle game, so they'll have a lot of turnovers sometimes. But Price there to bail them out. And what do you think Montreal's got to do to finally step up in the playoffs here?
Well, with the new playoff format, they're playing their rivals, the Boston Bruins, and I think for Montreal's key to success against the Bruins, they just have to keep on playing with that offensive game that they have in Alexander Ovechkin. They can't get too caught up in trying to change, maybe play defensive, because I think that's where they will get beat up by the Bruins, because the Bruins are a strong team, very strong. And if they get caught up in trying to play that physical force with guys like Kane, it's not going to work out. They just got to stick to their game plan, count on Carey Price, and I think they have a good chance.
What are your thoughts if Montreal gets eliminated? Because let's face it, these are the two wild card teams.
Mm-hmm.
One advances and one gets eliminated.
Yes, that wild card matchup is the only matchup where a team will actually be eliminated in the first round without a second chance.
So, Kruger, if Montreal gets eliminated, what do they need to do next season to ensure that does not happen again?
That's a tough one. I mean, they have so much. They're going to have a lot of problems coming next year with their young guys, especially if they get eliminated first. They'll be the last team, so they'll have more picks in the upcoming draft, which we all know, that could affect again what will happen in the future. So it's just all about smart decisions because they got guys like Barkov, Monahan coming in. You just got to leave it to the GM. We got to see what his decisions are because that's a tricky one, I'll tell you right there. Because I know from Buffalo's standpoint, there was one time when they had a lot of problems, but turned out a lot of them didn't pan out. Like look at Nail Yakupov. We'll talk more about that later maybe. But these guys are real. These guys are the real deal. Barkov, Monahan, those guys are coming up. And up the middle, as we mentioned, they're already so deep that there's only the GM can tell.
Exactly. I mean, we've seen Montreal. This is what seems like their 10th city in 3 seasons. And you can't keep running away from your failures, Mr. GM Criminal Cyrus. So we like to see and hope the fans and fans not just in Montreal but in the FHL see some success in Montreal for the sake of the betterment of the league. We can't have you changing teams every time you fail to hoist or even make an impact in the playoffs. Moving on. Let's get back to probably the most improved team year by year, the expansion team. Once the Vancouver Canucks now moved their franchise over to Pittsburgh, and that franchise move has really gave them a new identity, and that is the GM Godzilla of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
I mean, very impressive what he's been able to do in a short amount of time. Expansion teams, we've seen a lot of them in the FHL history. From, we know Ryan, the Detroit Red Wings, so many more, right?
So many more. They've, the thing with Pittsburgh is they've made a lot of savvy moves, a lot of smart moves. They don't get emotionally tied to some of their players. They do what they got to do to advance their franchise. They had Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They traded off the Sedins again. These guys do what it takes to put assets in their organization, and they get guys that they want to be in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
They don't have the most stacked team. I mean, they are getting there. But the guys that they bring in are guys who they want. I mean, they've been after, I think, Brent Burns for a while. They're able to acquire Brent Burns.
That's right.
There's just different things that he does, and they're a well-coached team. They continue to improve every year, and right now they're a real dark horse to make a real impact in these playoffs for sure.
Because you look at their team. If someone on the outside look at their team, they wouldn't think that he was an expansion team, that who's only been in the league for 3 years, and this is their second playoffs. The first year they couldn't participate. The second year, I believe they were eliminated in the first round. But this year they've pulled ahead in the last stretch of the season, last 3 weeks, taken advantage of this mini lockout, little all-star break that we had, and they trained. They're the only team I saw consistently on training, and they've pulled ahead of the Chicago Blackhawks and taken 3rd place.
That is very true. The Pittsburgh Penguins continue to train each and every day, and for sure, we see highlights on TSN and Sports Center. They're the guys out there playing other expansion teams and leagues, building their skill set, building their system, and it shows. The fruit, he's reaping the rewards. I mean, he's climbed pretty much to 3rd, and that's huge. That's a huge accomplishment for Godzilla, and I think he only has 1 draft pick this season. He's probably going to use that real wisely. And he's got talent. He's got young guys that are really going to step up. I mean, he made a savvy move for Ryan Johansson. A move that took advantage of a player that was booming, sees that he's on a roster that has a plethora of young guys and snags him. And literally the week later, Ryan Johansson is all of a sudden a household name around the entire league. So these are the kind of moves GM Godzilla makes, and he continues to improve his team. He's a very defensive-minded coach. He's able to slow the game down. He's able to attack. He's physical. He's got some idiots on his team as well, like Big Bert and Paul Gostad. Like, those guys are hated guys, and I take it from me. I'm from Chicago, and I hate those guys. And they have a pretty friendly. I wouldn't say friendly. They have a rivalry going with Chicago right now. We all thought that the playoffs were going to start with Chicago and Pittsburgh, and I think Chicago is a little happy he doesn't have to face Pittsburgh in the first round, because he's had a lot of problems in the last couple of games, whereas he's always able to squeeze. Chicago's usually able to squeeze out a win against Pittsburgh, by a goal or whatnot. But lately, it's definitely been tough. So I guess anything can go with Pittsburgh right now. I can't see why they can't go super far in the playoffs. There's really nothing to judge them on. You can't really judge their experience or the performance in the past. This is the first season they've been full blown, full steam ahead, and they are scary. They're a scary team, and once their assets, they got a lot of good young assets as well in their farm system, like Thomas Hertl, Timo Tervainen, some good defensemen as well. So once these guys get up to speed to their game, the sky's the limit for that team. That's for sure. And if he continues to coach the way he does,
true contender.
True contender, for sure. I guess you want to take a break to see if the camera's still rolling?
Okay, then we'll take a short commercial break right now, and we'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by
the Philippine brand. Who likes coconut? It's so masarap. Who's hungry?
Let me try. You're right. So yummy. Wow, masarap. And we're back, and we just finished with the Penguins, and now we're moving on to the most feared team in the entire league, the LA Kings. We talked about how they brought in Steven Stamkos and how that's affected their team, and just the overall evolution of that dynasty. What do you have to say about that, Silas?
LA is a powerhouse team. They are built for the extended playoffs, for a long, drawn-out season. They're a team that has plenty of firepower. They're a team that plays a big game. They hit, and they just don't play a big game. They got big boys on that back end. With guys like Shea Weber, they just added Tyler Myers. They had Zdeno Chara, who's the king of size and toughness and meanness in your face all the time. And they're big guys. They got the Stahl brothers. They got Stamkos. Rick Nash, and then they got little guys too that step up, like Gallagher and Kadri. Like, these guys are all young and they're learning how to win, and it shows. LA is another team that rolls four lines. Not very many teams roll their fourth line very much. So LA is very comfortable playing four lines. And, I guess it took him a while to get that chemistry. But, he was patient and didn't do too many drastic things. A lot of people thought maybe the Crosby thing was a knee-jerk reaction to the start of his season. But it was well planned out, and, he really capitalized on Crosby's worth. LA is LA.
Yeah.
You can't knock him. You can't doubt him. You can't judge anything from the start of the season to now, because LA's literally team. You hear the expression. You can't turn this light. The switch off and on. LA's a team that can turn the switch off and on, and if you let them get in your heads, Because when playoffs starts, you're against a championship caliber team. You let them get in your heads, they will burn you. Your thoughts on LA?
LA, every time you think something's going to go wrong in LA, it doesn't. You got their goalie situation for the beginning of the year. They had Ryan Miller, who's carried, I think he was on the team for every single championship they won. And Ryan Miller is out. Who steps in? Tuukka Rask, just like that. And he's another goalie that's just hard to beat. Everything always works out for LA. They might not always be the first in the standings going into the playoffs, but that never matters because they're always they're a playoff team. They're the definition of a playoff team. And as anyone who's ever matched up against LA in the playoffs knows, they win. There's only been one team in the entire history of the FHL to beat LA in a playoff matchup, and that was New York Islanders the year they won the Cup. LA hasn't won. LA hasn't lost a playoff series besides that one. And that year, LA didn't play any games. That was the first time they were on the ice, and that was in the playoffs. That's the only time they lost. So, pretty much an undefeated team in the playoffs.
Now, let's not forget probably the biggest piece to the LA Kings story, where you just think everything's going to crumble. Ilya Kovalchuk.
That's right.
Ilya Kovalchuk, the greedy Russian, decides, I got enough money in my pocket, so I'm going to leave the FHL to go back home. French. Why would he do that? Greed. This guy's not a winner. I mean, yeah, he won 4 cups. He doesn't appreciate it, so he's going to leave his team after signing contracts, after being the franchise player of that organization. That was devastation to an extreme extent for the GM, Gremlin. Like, I don't even know how you can't replace a player like Ilya Kovalchuk. No. And that is why I believe, obviously, that was the main reason why Crosby was traded.
Yeah. The guy gets 4 rings and he decides to step out. Captained the team for each championship, and I guess he just had enough of winning.
But again, LA manages to work around the situation. It took a while for Stamkos to fit into that organization. I mean, Stamkos is not yet at the caliber of Kovalchuk. No. I mean, when Kovalchuk had the puck, Kovalchuk was deadly. Absolutely deadly. And, missing that element, Nash tries to fill it. Sometimes he'll have his games and sometimes he won't. Malkin tries to do it. Malkin will have his games and sometimes he won't. Stamkos is the same way. But, that element of just fear of a guy with a puck, example, like an Ovechkin, the Marian Gabricks of the game. That element is gone now in LA. And LA had to pretty much learn how to play a much more team game.
Yeah.
And you can see they pass the puck a lot more. It's less one guy trying to take it in. And like you said, you touched on it. LA, just when you think the franchise has crumbled,
it doesn't.
It doesn't. There's cracks, but they rebuild. So
that brings us on.
This brings us on to the much improved also Boston Bruins.
Boston.
The big bad Bruins. And do they ever live up to their name this year?
Big time.
No longer do you have the Bruins headhunting. They headhunt smartly. No longer do you have a guy coming down, streaking on his defense, and you know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to try and hit you. So what does every team do? Deke. And score. No longer does that happen. Boston has readjusted. I don't know what they did. They must have fired their coaches or watched a lot more video or started playing some ball hockey. Actually, I do know their GM started playing ball hockey. So I think that actually opened his eyes.
Changed his game.
And changed his game and realized, positional play and the key importance to patience in the game. And Boston plays a very patient game. He actually anticipates plays now instead of falling for tricks. I mean, he used to get mad when you do tricks and deeks and showboat is because he fell for it all the time. He does not do that anymore. He understands if he gets burned, it's his fault. He understands when he plays a bad game, it's his fault. I mean, what were your experience with Boston this year?
Boston, very surprising. Right off, not just throughout the year, slow progression, but right off the bat, from the beginning of the year, we could see that Famox was surprised in the play. Only played him once in exhibition, and he lost that game in overtime. The first game against Boston, he lost it. Through the whole season, they've changed their game. Very solid, very steady. And not only that, but they've learned some tricks along the way. They're not just go in, shoot kind of team anymore. They know how to deke, they know how to dangle, they know how to exploit the game, if you will, and get those goals that throughout the entire FHL they didn't know how to do.
Exactly. I mean, when we thought of Boston's a crash and bang team. Throw the puck at the, take a shot, crash the net. Hopefully, you get some dirty rebound.
Yeah.
And Boston no longer plays that game. They do sometimes, and they also change it up, which makes them a threat. They can play, adapt, and they know exactly what they're doing. Not only offensively, but defensively. Yeah. I mean, he always wanted a big bad team. He always wanted to fight. I hardly see Boston fighting now at key times. He'll fight at a key time, but he won't fight for the sake of fighting because he understands, his team is a talented team, but Lucic also contributes offensively. If you're going to lose Lucic for 5 minutes, 10 minutes of a game for fighting, you're pretty much deemed your second line useless when you're double shifting a third liner. He understands that facet to the game now. So, Boston is definitely a team that they can make some real noise. And on top of that, the guy is phenomenal on face-offs.
Yes.
He is a great face-off team, a very high
strong.
percentage face-off team. And, we all know that if you have puck possession for most of the game, chances are you're going to win the game.
Yes. So that matchup, Boston-Montreal, that's going to be definitely one you'll want to keep your eye on. That could really go either way. And as it being a wild card, it could go. You never know how far it could go. But I would say the key to success for Boston, they've changed a lot, but still, when they're losing, not winning, they still have that hot-headed mentality, and their game will change if they let that get to them. And if they let Montreal get in their skin, it will affect their play.
I agree with you there. Boston, you can change your game, but you can't change the character of the man fully. And Boston, the GM is a hot-headed GM. And now when we're talking about a playoff that must be finished extremely fast, when you're maybe playing 3 or 4 games a night and you've lost 2 in a row, how does that affect your game? Do you reset to 0? Or do you let the other 2 games that you didn't have such good games affect your third game? That is the key to Boston. Win or lose through your attitude. And,
That's right.
if all things go well, Boston can make some noise. I mean, let's talk about their players. They got a lot, like we mentioned earlier, they got a lot of young guys in their prime. They don't have the most stock covered, but again, they have time to develop and draft later on. Boston, they made some really well thought out trades as well, and I guess the biggest advantage, they got a big bad team, big bad defense,
and they king in net.
And they got Henry Lundqvist in net, and they use their strengths well.
Mm-hmm. And
that's pretty much our breakdown for Boston. So if he keeps level head, he can do some damage in the playoffs. I guess we'll go to your specialty, Buffalo
Sabres.
What do you got to say about the Sabres this year? I mean, the Sabres are the team that everyone thinks is the next franchise team to beat, the next team to hoist the cup, the most dangerous team in the league, the team with the highest offensive output, but never hoisted the most coveted prize, and that is Lord FHL Cup.
Lord FHL Cup. Well, the Sabres, I think this has been the year where they just shown the most. Years past, they've always been on top, but this year they've had such a chokehold in the standings. I mean, we're talking 10, 15 points ahead of the second guy, and there's just a team that's from one time was made fun of and ridiculed for being the oldest, slowest, the joke team of the league, and they've developed a core group of guys that have stuck together for the past 2 years and really hasn't changed in a long time. I mean, you'll see some names that were unexpected, like Taylor Hall, who moved out, and Zach Parise, who moved out, but really, the team success is found in those guys that have been together for a really long time. You look at Marian Hossa, you see Ryan Getzlaff, Henrik Zetterberg. Henrik Zetterberg, the MVP of last year, and he's still those guys are still together, and that's why they found so much success this year, I think. And even before in the past, they've been ridiculed for being a bad defensive team, and you saw FAMOX bring in guys like Pietrangelo, and they have Johnson, and their defensive core is stronger than it has ever been going into a playoff season. And I think that's where most of the success will be found, and that's where the fans will be looking for them to win the cup this year.
Well, we'll have to see about where Buffalo stands. Like you said, Buffalo didn't do much. They did add key pieces. Buffalo will always be a threat, but they will always be judged on not winning. And until that happens, Buffalo can speak a high game and show all about high season regular season point totals. But at the end of the day, it's how many championships you own. And I think if any team's gonna really solidify the eliteness, Buffalo is the team that has to do it. Even this year, they are a good team. They are a team that has stuck together. Their core pieces are still the core pieces to that team, and I think I agree with you there that it's that made a world of a difference. Not too much line shuffling. There's a lot of familiarity with that team. They were good last year, and they're better this year. So again, Buffalo just needs to win to put that stamp that they are an elite franchise, and championships speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I guess
we're gonna speak about championships. Then we're gonna have to move on to the Chicago Blackhawks. 1 year, they make it to the finals. They're playing an expansion team, the New York Islanders. They're up 3-0 in the series, 1 game away from hoisting the first cup. And we all know what happens from there. It all goes crashing down into a fiery blaze. And since then, they haven't made it past the first round. So, what are they going to do this year? What are they going to change? How will they make it different?
Well, Chicago is a puzzle. Chicago has built their teams. They're known as one of the most defensively minded teams in the game. They're actually evolution of defensive style of play. And they pride themselves in that. However, they're also a team that's built in speed, but due to their fact that they're so defensive, they don't actually take full advantage of the speed of that team. And you would think of a team that's so defensively minded would have bigger players that can actually handle the grind against other bigger players. However, the GM just loves speed, and I think a lot of that love comes from the speed of Marian Gaborik. So he's acquired a lot of young, guys that can fly. As far as this season's concerned, I mean, let's put bygones by. Let's put things to rest. That season against the Islanders, that to us is buried. That to us, it hurt. Okay, Chicago Blackhawk fans, we all know that really sucked. That was a real good chance for us to win. This year, there's been, we kept our core group. Kopitar, Datsyuk, Gaborik, that first line's been clicking ever since we acquired Vander Kane. He's been very nice with Matt Duchene, who's finally been playing full-time second line minutes in the middle, and of course with Taylor Hall. So there's a lot of young and high-end speed on that second line. The addition of Vladimir Tarasenko has been really, really nice for Chicago. Again, a good candidate for Rookie of the Year, which they had Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who again had a sophomore jinx. He's not as effective this year. They brought into the Sedins. I mean, the glaring weakness for Chicago, as a team that loves to play defense, they don't have the greatest defensive players on the back end. They got a lot of, a lot of guys, what Paulie G would say are wussies. And also what Lucic would call wussies, There's a lot of question marks on that defense. Yeah. And, they had a lot of problems handling LA's size last year. And they didn't really do anything to address that this year in the back end. They got rid of probably their biggest defenseman, which was Pietrangelo.
Alex Petty, yeah.
Who can score and play D. They brought in Phaneuf, but Phaneuf lacks that element that Pietrangelo brought to the table. But in exchange for that, they got a young, nice forward in Patrick Kane. Evander Kane. So Chicago, we don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in Chicago this year. They're my favorite team. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. I will hope for the best for the Chicago Blackhawks. But, I'm going to be their biggest critic and I don't think, it doesn't look good. It does not look good. It does not look good. I'll say that right now. But again, they have a lot of talent. Gaborik has really stepped up this year. He's been, a real offensive juggernaut for that team when they need him. So, but he can't carry and shoulder that team. Ryan Miller has been off and on. Luongo, Luongo has been off and on. But, yeah, their biggest glaring weakness is their defense. Your thoughts on Chicago?
Yeah, Chicago, it's going to be an interesting matchup. We got a surprise matchup. We didn't think would happen so early, but we got the Buffalo Sabres, Chicago Blackhawks, first round. And that's really going to be something to watch. I mean, they've been two rivalry teams since, I think, the beginning of the FHL. And to see them face off in the first round, it's going to be something. I mean, they both know how each other play. They play each other the most out of any FHL teams. And that's just, it's going to be something.
It's going to gauge a lot. I mean, if Chicago loses that series, it depends on how they lose it, because they get a wild card shot again.
Yeah.
It depends how they lose it, how they will perform later on. If they win it, who knows? I'm not gonna make any predictions against my own team, obviously, but they're hard pressed. They're gonna be hard. They're no longer the favorites this year.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a more better feeling for a Boston team this year than a Chicago team. Boston's been, they've been losing. They're not, they're bottom of the standings, but they're more consistent of a team.
They're on the incline
than the Chicago Blackhawks have been this year.
But let's talk about that. You say they're, not the favorite this year. What has to change? What going into next year will make it different, so that the fans will be excited? We've heard them talk for years about a city change. If the Chicago Blackhawks do not win the Cup this year, if they do not make the finals again, do you think we're going to see that?
I was hoping, I live in Chicago. I follow the team every time. But, this year they were supposed to change. There was a big rumor that they were supposed to change. And they didn't. They stayed in the city. And they haven't done anything to make you think otherwise, that, it was a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully they do move. I mean, if it depends on how embarrassing the loss is. If they don't make it to the finals, at least, I think it'll be sad. But the fans will stop paying the high prices to watch games. Yeah. I mean, these are expensive FHL teams. You're paying high salaries. I mean, some third liners are making $8.6 million a season. You can no longer support a team in a city that has that much. If you're losing revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think Jurassic's got to realize maybe it's time to change the colors. If you don't want to change the face of the franchise or some of your young assets, then, the next best thing is to change the colors. And, it looks like it's worked for Pittsburgh so far. LA when he switched. Montreal so far. So, it's never a bad thing for a fresh start. So, I'm all for it. And, again, I guess it's just really up to Jurassic. And hopefully he's, he opens his eyes to that change as well. So,
what we got left?
Let's just, I guess, end it off pretty soon here. I guess we'll just talk about the first round series and talk about, who to watch and what our predictions may be.
All right.
So I guess we'll start with the teams we just talked about, and that's LA. I mean, that's first place team Buffalo against fourth place team Chicago Blackhawks. I guess your Your assessment on who to watch and how do you think this is going to end?
This is going to be, this is a tough one for me to analyze personally, but I will do my best, throw my best shot out there. I'm going to say the key pieces in this are going to be the first lines. They're always going to be head-to-head. We know how, you touched earlier, how LA likes to roll 4 lines. I don't think Chicago and Buffalo are those kind of teams. You always see the first, second, third, and then you'll see the first out right away. It's always a double shift for those guys, and they see each other head-to-head all the time. Giroux, Datsuk, Gaborik, Hossa, those guys will be the key factors. Who's hot off the bat and who's not. That's going to be who decides, I think, the winning factor in the series. Depends how it plays out. If Hossa and Zetterberg are on, it's them. If it's going to be Kopitar, Datsuk, it's going to be them.
And who do you think is going to win that series?
I'm going to have to go with my hometown of Buffalo Sabres. They'll take that series. And I'll say 6 games.
For my hometown team, Chicago Blackhawks, I agree with Kruger's assessment that the top lines 1, 2, and 3 go head-to-head all the time. Depends who's dominating that series will be pretty much the deciding factor. We all know the love. I mean, Marian Hossa and Marian Gaborik are best friends. They're both the same nationality, and they vacation together over the summer. So there is an internal competition between the two. Very seldom will you see Gaborik score a goal and Marian Hossa not respond in that same game. So it's going to be a lot of, I think, seesaw battle. Both teams are very, very educated on how each team plays, each system is played, and I don't think any team's really going to change that, especially that the playoffs has pretty much just started at an emergency basis.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, I'm not going to be a biased a fan. I might get fired as an analyst here. I don't know. I'll check my iPhone later on. But I'm going to have to go with Buffalo and maybe make it a 4-2 affair. I just don't think Buffalo's defensemen, they can roll too, with Keith and Phaneuf, but I think there's still some question marks with, Vlasic, who's just stepped in the top 4 role, and Keith Yandel. And of course, there was no respect given to Oliver Ekman-Larsson this year. I'm sure next year it will be there. But unfortunately, I just don't think they had the key defenseman to hang with Buffalo at the get-go. And so I'm going to go with Buffalo 4-2.
One key point, too, will be the goaltending.
Yes, of course, goaltending.
Because you got Miller and Luongo, who really, throughout the season, have been playing back and forth, splitting games, from what I've seen. And then you have Jonathan Quick, who has been good throughout the times, but also has struggled a lot as well. So that will be one thing to watch as well.
Next series we're going to talk about is the 2nd and 4th place or 3rd place teams, and that is, of course, the almighty Los Angeles Kings against the surging
Pittsburgh
Penguins. I guess your thoughts on key players to watch and your outcome.
All right, this is a very interesting matchup. I mean, I didn't really think about this matchup, but key players, of course, are going to have to be Ryan Kessler, who is the leading point getter right now for the Penguins, and also, of course, for LA, it's going to have to be, I think, Nash, Malkin. Those 2 guys are going to be the leaders of that team who are going to carry them throughout the playoffs because they have the experience of winning the cups. They have the experience with GM Gremlin, and they've been there before. They're going to have to be the ones who lead the way for younger guys like Galchenyuk and Landeskog, who's just brought in this year. It's going to be a very, very tough matchup for both of those teams because of the way that they play. LA's got the physical advantage, and I will have to say that the Penguins do have the defensive advantage in style of play there. But I can't really go against the champion Kings, so I'm going to take the Kings, but I will take them to Game 7.
Interesting. For me, with the LA is a good team, obviously, very powerful team. Against Pittsburgh, however, just watching the way they've been playing lately, I think Pittsburgh will put up a good fight against the LA Kings. I think the key players to watch for the Penguins is, of course, the big bad Mr. Corey Perry. That guy's in your face. I think he's more physical and more gifted scorer against a guy maybe against a Malkin or Nash. I mean, Nash and Malkin, they're phenomenal players, but Corey Perry does it all. He hits, he passes, he scores, he creates opportunities also for his line mates. You touch base on Ryan Kessler, big face-off guy. Face-offs is huge for the Penguins, and I think they're a much better face-off team than the Kings. And lately the way Penguins have been playing, they're a very, very puck possession team. They're not going to give the puck up too often, and when they do, like you said, they got Chris Letang, they got Ryan Suter. They're very deep in the back end, and once you get past those defense, you still got to get past through Pekka Rinne, and that guy can win some games. Key to Pittsburgh, continue to play how they play. Perry's got to step up. You got guys like Jeff Skinner who can put the puck in the net. Brent Burns, addition of Brent Burns has been really good for Pittsburgh as well. I guess they were a little iffy on Jordan Staal. However, Stahl's a big body. He knows how to win. Yeah. I mean, he's won a championship before with LA. LA's key to success, just do what LA does, and that's pound the crap out of you. Have zone time. Drop to the points. Rask can hold his own really well too, but it's going to be a very interesting matchup. Especially as a first round matchup, this is really going to test both teams for sure. I think my prediction for this, though, I can't go against the grain. I'm gonna have to go with LA, and I think LA takes this in 6 games. I think it's gonna be a 4-2 series. Again, it all depends on if LA makes it 2-0. They're playing home ice advantage. Then I think it's gonna be a 4-2 series. If Pittsburgh can split, maybe you are talking 7. But the first 4 games is definitely key for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, come on right, swinging.
And I guess your final thoughts on the wild card series.
The wild card
Boston
series.
And Montreal.
Again, we didn't expect this series. We thought it would be 1 versus 6 again. But with the new playoff format, this is something that's going to be very interesting to watch. You got the 2 rivalry teams. I think this is the way the playoffs have played out. The matchups for the first round, it's perfect in terms of rivalries, because you got the Sabres and the Hawks, the Penguins and the Kings, and then now you got the Montreal Canadiens and the Boston Bruins. These guys see each other a lot, and I think, of course, it's gonna lay in the hands of whether either if Ovechkin can get it going early for Montreal, because in the last few years he has not been the kind of guy that shows up in the playoffs. I mean, he's kind of been doing the disappearing act that Russians seem to do. But if he can get it going early and keep on playing the way he's been playing throughout the regular season, then Boston has a big issue on their hands, because I think that Ovechkin, Kane, Taves, Tavares, the offense on that team is just so deadly that I don't think the Bruins will be able to handle it. If they can keep on playing the way they've been playing. However, if they get trapped, and I've said this earlier in the show, if they get trapped into the physical play that the Bruins are known for, Montreal's done. If they try to run around and try to get retaliate because Lucic made a big hit, or it's over, because that's not their game. If they get trapped into that kind of style of game, the Bruins will take it. So the keys for Boston: play your game, play physical, and injure Kane. Injure Ovechkin, then you win. But if Montreal overpowers them offensively, I don't think there's anything they can do because they just can't match up to Montreal's play if in the offensive zone. They just can't. It's impossible.
So, who's your prediction out of this one?
Prediction on this series, I'm gonna go. That's a tough one, but I'm gonna go Montreal. I'll take Montreal on this one, and I'll give them 6 games. 6 games. Montreal 6 games.
You made some good points. Boston, although he's improved, this playoffs is going to be very, very intense because it's going to be firing on all cylinders. There is no time for you to reset your mind if you are down 2 games to none. These games must be played. We cannot delay these playoffs. So a lot of it will be based on emotion. I think Boston can hang quite nicely, offensively, defensively. He's got the skill to win. However, in a compressed playoffs, can he control his emotions to actually win 4 games? That is the key question. You're right about Montreal. If Montreal tries to match the intensity of the physicality of the Boston Bruins, starts running around instead of doing and playing his transition game that he's known to play, he's not going to beat Boston. Boston will beat the crap out of their players. They will slow the momentum down for the team, and guys like Lucic, Bufflin from the point, they're gonna score goals from there. Again, it's a tough call in this series. Both GMs want to prove something this year, so they're gonna want it. So I think it's a perfect series. I think you touch base again perfectly. It's a perfect the way everything kind of fell into play, with me or with the Chicago against Buffalo, LA against the Penguins, and then the Boston Bruins against Montreal Canadiens, because the rivalry is there. Every team is trying to prove something in every series. Pittsburgh wants to prove that they're no longer considered an expansion team, that they're part of this, the skill level that it takes to make an impact in this league. Boston is trying to prove that they're no longer the same team they are, and Montreal is trying to prove that switching to 10 different cities in 2 years it wasn't a waste of the money, and Buffalo is trying to prove that they are the elite team that everyone says they are, and Chicago is trying to justify the reasons for staying in Chicago. So it's definitely an interesting first round, but I think because it's being so compressed, I'm going to have to give this series to Montreal. Montreal has home ice advantage. If Montreal can get 2 games in Montreal, I'm going to give Montreal a 4-1 victory in 5 games. So there you have it, guys. We definitely apologize for the length of the video. Obviously, this is the long delayed process. Our only video we were able to get up this year, unfortunately. But we will do another draft day edition video that's coming up quickly. Obviously we're all going to be on live to make sure the draft happens before it happens in the NHL. We'll do an analysis on that. I guess we'll do an analysis on the new arenas. Everyone's building a brand new arena next year. Very excited with the technology that's going to be introduced to our game. Hopefully we're as big as FIFA, and I guess we'll just touch base after the draft. The playoffs will be done. There'll be a new crowned champion, or same crowned champion, but it's exciting. It's exciting times.
Yep, we can do a video even after the first round if we want.
Yes, that's a good idea. We have production crew. They're not doing anything right now. So yeah, after every round, we'll do we owe it to the league to do something a little more exciting, as we've not been on top of our game as far as keeping everything all lively. So big ups to all you GMs and fans for continuing to participate in the league and posting scores and stuff like that. So me and Kruger here will make sure we'll do videos per round.
All right, so this is gonna conclude. I think this was probably 40 minutes of a video here. But that's it for episode 2 of GM's Corner. I think we covered pretty much a whole season in this 40 minutes, and I'll be looking forward to being at the arenas for these games in the playoffs. Wish all GMs good luck in this year, this big playoffs coming up. Good luck trying to capture the cup. That's the dream, right? And we'll see you on the ice, I suppose.
Definitely. We'll see you guys on the ice. Thank you again for tuning in to Coach's Corner episode 2, 2014. I am Silas the Boogeyman, signing out.
Freddy Krueger, and we'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe!
Don't forget to hit that like button.
It helps to support.
Oh.
Phone is dead.